My name is Reverend Dr. Barry King, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I'd like to share with you a companion video for the book Unconditional Love. And this is chapter number 12, Ego, Power, and the Illusion of Control. In this chapter, I want to speak about something that affects many relationships, often in subtle ways. It is the relationship between ego, power, and control. Most people do not think of themselves as trying to control love. They do not usually enter relationships with the conscious intention of holding power over another person. Yet when fear enters relationship, control often appears quietly. It may show up as needing things to happen a certain way. It may appear as wanting reassurance over and over again. It may express itself through emotional pressure, withdrawal, criticism, or the need to be right. Sometimes it is obvious. Sometimes it is much more refined. But beneath it, there is usually the same issue: fear. From a spiritual perspective, ego is not simply arrogance or pride. Ego is the part of the human mind that becomes identified with separation. It believes safety comes from managing outcomes, defending identity, and protecting itself from uncertainty. When ego becomes active in the relationship, love begins to change. Instead of openness, there is strategy. Instead of presence, there is management. Instead of trust, there is control. The ego does not trust life easily. It does not trust another person easily, and it especially does not trust vulnerability. So it tries to create safety through power. This power may take many forms. One person may try to control the emotional atmosphere by becoming critical or distant. Another may try to control the relationship by overfunctioning, taking responsibility for everything, and making themselves indispensable. Another may use silence, pressure, guilt, or intensity in order to shape the other person's behavior. These behaviors are not always cruel in intention. Very often they are protective in origin. The person is afraid of loss, afraid of rejection, afraid of the unseen, afraid of not mattering. And so the ego says, if I can control enough, I can stay safe. But control never creates safety, never the safety it promises. It only creates tension. This is one of the great illusions in relationship, the illusion that if you manage the other person carefully enough, if we say the right things, demand the right things, monitor the right things, or hold enough emotional influence, then love will remain stable. But love does not deepen through control. It deepens through trust, honesty, and awareness. Control may produce compliance for a time. It may produce reassurance. It may even produce temporary closeness, but it does not produce freedom. And where there is no freedom, love eventually begins to feel strained. From a spiritual point of view, the need for power in relationship often arises when we have forgotten who we are. If I do not know myself as spirit, if I do not feel grounded in my own worth, then I will be much more likely to seek power through the relationship. I may try to gain certainty through emotional influence. I may try to feel secure by controlling how close the other person remains, how they respond, or how they prioritize me. But all of that effort comes from the same misunderstanding, the misunderstanding that my safety depends on controlling another person. It does not. Real strength in relationship does not come from control. It comes from self-awareness. It comes from the ability to notice what is happening within us before we make the other person responsible for it. It comes from recognizing when ego is active and asking a more honest question. What am I actually afraid of right now? That question changes everything. Because when fear is acknowledged, control begins to soften. And when control softens, love has room to breathe. It is also important to understand that ego and power do not only appear in dramatic ways, they can appear in very ordinary moments. The need to win every argument, the inability to apologize, the refusal to admit vulnerability, the tendency to make another person wrong in order to avoid feeling exposed. These are small expressions of the same pattern. The ego would rather preserve control than experience humility. But love grows through humility. Love grows when two people are willing to say, I may not be seeing this clearly. It grows when someone is willing to step back from the need to dominate the conversation and instead choose understanding. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean losing oneself. And it certainly does not mean allowing unhealthy behavior. It means recognizing that control is not the same as strength. Strength in relationship comes from clarity, from honesty, from the willingness to remain present without turning fear into power. When we begin to understand this, relationships change. They become less about managing one another and more about meeting one another consciously. The need to control begins to fade because the deeper need beneath it has been seen. And often that deeper need is simply the longing to feel safe, valued, and loved. When that longing is met with awareness rather than ego, something very beautiful begins to happen. Power gives way to presence. Defensiveness gives way to humility, and love becomes less about control and more about truth. And that is where conscious relationships begin to mature. And that is where the illusion of control starts to fade away. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you. I wish you love, joy, peace, and happiness. And hug someone you love. Thank you.